Hi, it's Ian from the Postal Hub Podcast.
And Marek from Last Mile Experts.
And we are the Last Mile Prophets. This is the last word on the last mile. Marek, a topic that I don't think we've ever covered it in our videos, is this Superfast delivery thing that's happening right now. The likes of Getir, Gorillas, Flink, Weezy, Fridge No More, Gopuff. I think we might have mentioned Gopuff once. But let's just set the scene here. Getir was recently announced more funding. I think it was a round of $550 million.
Not bad at all, I'd say.
Which means that they're valued at $7.5 billion. We're talking about startups. What's the real story there? Well, I'm sure plenty of people will comment below. But there is some silly money coming into that segment right now. I know I don't usually start these things off with a lecture, Marek, but I'm a bit concerned that these companies are just going to burn through investor dollars and never actually return a profit. There was a headline a few weeks ago it was the CEO of DoorDash, I think it was, who was getting paid more than many Fortune 500 companies, but DoorDash has never turned a profit. Maybe I'm being cynical, Marek, and people say, "Oh, Ian, you're not seeing the big picture. You're not being a visionary here. You shouldn't be a last mile prophet if you can't see the future." What do you reckon?
First of all, as we're talking about Getir, I have to start and say merhaba to all of my Turkish friends. Now, I like Getir. These guys are pretty smart. To be fair, I didn't take a detailed look at their financials, but the model's good. They've been hugely successful in a very difficult market. Because for those of you who are not familiar with Turkey, the last mile there really needs a bit of disruption. And I think these guys have done a great job. My feeling is they may well be successful because they're super smart, tech-driven, adaptable, and asset light. They're all things that I like. The question, of course, is will they start paying their CEO millions and millions of dollars, spend money where they shouldn't, or will they continue to perfect the last mile and be relevant even after COVID? If they go the second way, I'm really optimistic because who are they fighting with, or who are their competitors? The legacy carriers who have the opposite situation, who know the last mile really well, but they have big, heavy legacy systems that don't move fast.
Some people might say they're not actually in competition with the legacy carriers. They're actually in competition with the likes of 7-Eleven and the corner shop because they focus on this super fast 10-minute delivery, often with a limited range. So you're not talking about 20,000 SKUs, you might be talking about 2,000. But with those 2,000, they can guarantee delivery within a certain radius within 10 minutes. That is super fast. And it is, let's look at it from a consumer perspective. If the consumer says, well, I'm only having to pay £2 or €3 or whatever it is for this super fast delivery, well, that's easier than me having to walk to the shop. Right. That's
one segment, Ian. And indeed, they can have two models. And again, because they're super smart, they can have, let's say, the more traditional model where they do a deal with a retail network with a strong footprint and have access. The other one could be that they create their own dark stores, which will invariably be more efficient if they're well located. But that's only part of the business. They're also moving into the business of parcels. So, my view is if they play their cards right, they do have an opportunity to be relevant. And that's where they will be going head to head with both actually the legacy carriers, but also let's call it the legacy retailers, the retailers who are not able to adapt. Because both in retail, post-COVID particularly, and in parcel, people want more convenience and there is a trend to go faster. And this is where the legacy carriers and perhaps sometimes retailers may come a cropper.
I suppose if you're looking at it in terms of purely as a retail thing, well, yeah, you might. There are some things, yeah, you appreciate having it really quick. Food delivery, essentials and things like that. I suppose I want to come back to my original point, which was at what point does this subsidized delivery, because in many cases it is essentially a subsidized delivery service, when does it cease to be subsidized and the customer starts to pay the real price? And let's separate this from the discussion about subscription programs like Prime. Okay, because Prime is obviously a special case and it's got some very profitable business wrapped up in there. But if we just look at, say, a company that's been funded by SoftBank or one of those sort of VC funds, and they're offering a lot of subsidized delivery right now, and somebody put it beautifully. I think it might have been in the LA Times. I'll try and pop a link down below. It was subsidizing millennials' lifestyles. right? So people are living their champagne lifestyles on a beer budget. Well, what happens when you're no longer having a champagne lifestyle with a beer budget, and these companies have to start paying the customers have to start paying the true cost of delivery. The thinking behind some of these companies, not all necessarily, but is that customers will get hooked on convenience and will be almost addicted to the convenience. And so if you say, well, look, you can no longer get your Superfast within 10 or within 15 minutes delivery for £2, but it's going to cost you £8, well, maybe people will be addicted to it. I can understand that could work, Marek.
My view is it's a little bit deeper than that. And let's talk about the retail side. Retail needs new omnichannel delivery options. There will be some customers who are actually prepared to pay, and research that I've looked at shows that it's still not the majority, but you do have a growing minority, and we're not talking 2 or 3%. It's probably, as far as I remember, coming up to 15, 20%. Are prepared to actually pay for that convenience. So on one hand, you've got a group of customers that are really prepared to pay real money, because you're right, it is fairly expensive. The second thing is some of those retailers understand that actually it's worth their while subsidizing, because they'll get a bigger deal out of other items, particularly if the retailer happens to be somebody like Amazon who's got fresh and other items. So I think there will be some that survive. The ones that survive will be the ones that are efficient, customer-centric, and can offer relative value for money for that type of product. And honestly, Ian, it's going to be the same thing, I believe, in parcels. Not everybody will survive. Not everybody will make it work. But the best-in-class players do have a role to play, because we can see that there is a growing group of people who want that sort of instant gratification.
One quick thing I want to mention before we wrap up, Marek, is that we are seeing, though, this, what they call dark store or a local fulfilment center kind of model is being looked at a lot more seriously by traditional retailers. And even I saw a headline, I think it might have been Russian Post, is looking at doing something similar. Now, obviously, there's a leader in that space in Russia. I think it's called Yandex something or other. I can't remember the exact name of it. There's basically a local fulfillment model where you can order from your local convenience store and it's delivered within 15 minutes. So more and more retailers will look at how they can do that. The question's going to be, do you take the grocery model and say, well, I'm going to plug into an Instacart or to a DoorDash or whoever? Do I do it myself? How can I make it profitable? Am I going to make customers sticky, so they stay with me? Do I fulfill from my store, or do I set up dark stores, which are just dedicated to fulfilling customers' orders and never have to deal with real retail customers who walk through the door? It's interesting that at least, this model has changed the thinking there. So regardless of whether some of these startups survive into 2022 or beyond, they've definitely changed the thinking in some parts of retail and some parts of delivery, haven't they?
Absolutely. And by the way, I love that sort of series of questions, because I can answer my favorite answer. It depends. But you know what, Ian, it really does. I think there are different models. The only thing I would say is the ones that interest me particularly are the ones that are based upon the sharing economy, on open models where you do this efficiently. And I think, the big boys like Amazon will always find a way to do it themselves. But there has to be an alternative that will mean that the smaller e-commerce and retailers can have viable modus operandi. But that's going to involve working together. So the sharing economy is going to be the next hot topic.
And just in closing, really quickly, I saw a study just recently suggested that some of these companies had to do 8,000 orders a day in a city to be profitable. So it's not small bickies when you think about 8,000 orders a day for delivery in a city. Anyway, we've run out of time, Marek. I have a feeling this is going to stimulate plenty of discussion. We're probably going to come back to this in the future. Comment below, everybody. Marek Różycki, thanks for being part of the Last Mile Profits today.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you, everybody.